Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's Better on Draft.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 253 Better on Draft podcast. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday, April the 2nd. No April Fools here. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to go around real quick, introduce the host, see what we're drinking. I, myself, am drinking a high-low from Cigar City Brewing, which is their more sessionable IPA. Sessionable IPA. I am jamming on it. This might be a new favorite for me. Wendy, what's up? What are you drinking over there?
Well, I am pulling a Nick today. I started with a Unite Hibiscus Saison. I don't even know what I'm talking about already. From Bell's. It was their 2019 International Women's Day collab. They continued to brew it. It's a fantastic beer. But I also have a Jai Alai. I was hoping to get the Maduro Brown, but they were out of it, so I had to go with the second choice today.
Yeah, I definitely looked for a Maduro Brown today, or yesterday. Was unable to find it. But Nick, what's going on? What are you drinking? Oh, we might. Hi, Nick.
Sorry, I actually hit the mute button this time, or unmute, I should say, and it didn't work the first time. So I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I'm glad that I have a long weekend, and it started today. I got a Goose Island 312. I didn't have a chance to really leave the house today to get anything special, but that's okay. And then I got a Atwater Vanilla Java Porter.
All right, and Dan, what's going on over there? What are you drinking?
What's going on? You know, I had to stick to my usual. I couldn't find what I was looking for, so I got the old vodka soda going on. Also got a seltzer here ready to go after that.
Oh, Dan is getting ready to have some fun this weekend. Well, we have two guests in our virtual studio today, hailing from Tampa, Florida. They might not be in the city itself, but Cigar City, we've got Wayne. How are you doing today?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having us today.
No problem. Why don't you tell everyone real quick who you are and what you do for Cigar City?
I was the first employee of Cigar City Brewing and currently act as the brewmaster of Cigar City Brewing. I developed all the early recipes and still work on some innovation today.
All right. And what are you drinking?
Allagash White.
Allagash White. We were talking about it in the pre-show. Still one of my favorite beers out there. And also from Cigar City, we have Neil. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do at Cigar City?
Hey, I'm Neil Callaghan. I'm the brand manager with Cigar City Brewing. Just means I kind of have my hands in a whole lot of stuff around the brewery, marketing, sales, working with Wayne and his brew team, and talking about beer for a living. So it could be a lot worse.
All right. Well, we're going to start with you real quick because I have a question, and this is something that I feel a lot of brewers and representatives have to deal with, and that's misnomers within the brewing industry. What are some misnomers, misinformation that you feel people might have about Cigar City or beers like Jai Alai that kind of get spread out into the ether of the beer world?
Right out of the gate, I'm going to go with pronunciations. I have traveled all over the country and all over the world talking about Jai Alai, and if there is a way to pronounce Jai Alai incorrectly, I've heard every single one of them. Jai Alai, Jai Alai, Jai Alai. That one's my favorite. I don't know how you look at that and get Jai Alai, but really when Wayne and Joey were kind of developing, and obviously Wayne can speak more eloquently on this, but when they were developing kind of the ethos for the brewery, a lot of it was telling the story of Tampa, Florida through the beer. And talking about Tampa, you have to talk about the game of Jai Alai. If I would say for people who aren't familiar with the game, if you're over the age of 35, it was the thing in the beginning of Miami Vice. And if you're under the age of 35, it was in an episode of Jackass. They were throwing oranges against Steve-O's ass.
One of my favorite parts of the TV show, mind you, is that particular bit. Sorry, I had to throw that in.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we're bridging cultural gaps here, you know? So really explaining what Jai Alai is something that we do an awful lot. So part of my role as brand manager is a lot more to talk about the brand itself and talk about the inspiration for the marketing and sort of the story that we're telling. As far as the brewing, as far as the ingredients and some of the misinformation that's out there, Wayne's probably the better guy to talk to about that. But really what our brewery is all about. Even the name itself is something that I feel like there is a lot of confusion around. We still get people that go, oh, Cigar City, so you brew cigars there? No, we don't. That's not how that works. But so again, talking about Tampa history, you can't talk about Tampa history without talking about cigar history. Late 1800s, early 1900s, there were dozens and dozens of cigar manufacturers, mostly in an area of Tampa called Ybor City. Tampa was actually the biggest purchaser of Cuban-made tobacco in the world before the Cuban Revolution. So it employed thousands of people and was really an integral part of the growth of Tampa. So that's part of, my job is to get out there and explain where some of the inspiration for the branding and the marketing comes from. But as far as sort of the liquid itself and the beer itself, I think Wayne's probably the best guy to talk about the things that he's constantly explaining.
All right. Well, he actually, I don't know if he dropped off. We might have lost him for a second, so you're stuck with us on a one-on-four interview here for sure. Don't worry, we got plenty of questions for you to keep going through. You know, we kind of talked about it and alluded to it earlier. When we were talking pre-show, I love getting to know you guys a little bit more before bringing you on. Now, obviously, Jai Alai is a high-rated beer, but when you go into distribution into a state like, say, Michigan, you're going up against not only any of the beers that we're bringing in, but Two Hearted, All Day IPA, all the IPAs that Shorts is making, the hazies from Old Nation and Old Odd Side Ales. How do you try to set yourself up, not necessarily above, but outside of that to be like, hey, why don't you try our beer out from Florida?
Michigan specifically is a really interesting market. And Ken, you actually mentioned it before we started recording. Everybody from Michigan, everybody from that part of the world ends up down in Florida, whether it's for spring break, spring training. Obviously, the Tigers are out in Lakeland for their spring training facility. Go visit grandma and grandpa. There are so many people that do travel specifically from the Midwest and from the Northeast that end up down in Florida. And when we were a small brew and when we weren't distributing in Michigan and other parts of the country, people would come down. They would, if you're into beer and you're in Florida, you're probably going to come across some Jai Alai or any of Cigar City beers. So having that sort of the word for our beer travel around so quickly and so intuitively, where people would come down again for any number of reasons, come down to Florida, try Jai Alai, try Cigar City beer, and then go back to Michigan even when we weren't distributing, and they go, oh man, I had this incredible beer, and I had it when I was on the beach, or had it when I was sitting in the stadium watching the Tigers have spring training. So we're incredibly fortunate that has helped us really earn a reputation specifically to, again, the Midwest and the Northeast, that tourism has really, really helped. Part of the way that we've been able to kind of ingratiate ourselves into the Michigan beer market as well is through the partnership that we have with CANArchy. So we are part of the brewery co-op. It's called CANArchy. It's us, it's Oscar Blues, Three Weavers out in California, Squatters and Wasatch in Utah, Deep Ellum in Texas, and obviously Perrin, who are out in Comstock, Michigan. So through this partnership, we're able to automatically have a sales team that understands the market and have people in leadership positions that really understand the Michigan market better than anybody. So it's not like we're coming from Florida and we're just kind of going, hey, we're going to treat Michigan the same way that we treat Ohio or the same way that we treat Oklahoma. We have people that are from Michigan and have been selling beer in Michigan for a long time, so that when we did enter the market, we were able to tap and use those resources of the folks who have been working with Perrin and selling Perrin in the market for that long. So we had a leg up in that sense, really, between the migration between Michigan and Florida and being part of an organization that includes Perrin. It's been awesome.
Now, before I pass it to my co-host to continue the conversation, Wayne, welcome back. Why don't you give us a hey, hello, how are you, to make sure that your volume's good to go?
Yep, I'm back. Sorry about that. Screen froze.
You're all right. Neil was doing just fine answering all of our questions, so I am going to discuss real quick because, as you mentioned, Cigar City being part of CANArchy, and we have here in Perrin as part of CANArchy. There was a few years ago, you actually came, Wayne, you came to Michigan to brew Jai Alai here at Perrin. Now, we've discussed with other brewers trying to get the water right and trying to get all the little, the chemistry portion right to make it taste as close, if not the same. We had that when there was a brewery here in Michigan, Old Nation, started brewing a contract brew over at Brew Detroit. So trying to get that down, how were you able to do that in such a short time that you were up here to brew that batch?
Well, I mean, it definitely wasn't our first shot at it. I mean, we've been working with Brew Hub and some other facilities to increase the volume of production to do our best to meet demand. So it's just basically, sharing notes, looking at the brewing equipment. Obviously, like you said, water is a big part of the whole deal. And there are certain things that you just have to kind of see the results of a first run before you can make any adjustments. It's definitely not something that's easy, but it's definitely something that's achievable. I don't know, but at the time I still have a close relationship with John Stewart, and we seem to work really well together, and I felt like we ended up doing a good job in a short period of time.
Dan, go for it.
Sorry, I didn't know you were done, Wayne. My bad. This question is actually for you. Looks like in an interview back in 2012, you mentioned both shorts and bells as major inspirations for your brewing. As years have gone on, what newer breweries are starting to inspire you to continue to up your game?
I don't know if it's necessarily inspiration. I think it's more about continuing to focus on fine tuning traditional styles. In some cases, focusing on new raw materials. I wouldn't necessarily point at a single brewery. I will say that my brewing experiences with Sean Hill have been very productive. I think some of the conversations and work we've done let me see some of the possibilities. Like sometimes I think that I have a tendency not to explore things as deeply, even though I feel like I've looked at things thoroughly. And sometimes working with other people can help you realize that you can take it a step further than that. You could do even more research and delve into it further. And I've definitely had that experience with definitely Sean Hill is one of them, but other brewers as well. So definitely that's a huge benefit of brewing collaborations, is having those experiences and trying to take the best of those experiences and apply them to your own brewing practices.
Awesome. And Wendy, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I'm Wendy, and I am a mug club junkie. So I wanted to talk a little bit and ask kind of about your El Catador Club, because it's a little bit beyond the traditional mug club. So I'm just wondering if you could tell people what it is and why it's special, and how do I join?
It's a barrel age club that we started back in 2013, I believe, is the origin date. So basically, we decided to make these special exclusive barrel aged beers and try to invest as much passion and emotion into these different projects, and then focus on unique barrels and unique raw materials and whatever else sort of struck our interest at the time. And El Catador Club then became a tangible entity at that point, and we've just been moving forward as time has progressed, and I think it's continuing to evolve, and I think that I think Club 12 was like a brighter evolution than maybe some of the prior club releases, and it's just really I love being involved with it, and I love the creative freedom that it provides me. And I especially like the direction that it's headed now. One of the great things I think we've done recently is instead of just offering one 750 ml bottle, we've now switched to two 500 ml bottles. And I think that, in my opinion, I wish that had been the way it had been from day one, because personally, if I'm getting something special like this and I only have one bottle, the chances of me opening it immediately are probably slim to none. But then there's also a high opportunity for me to sit on it so long that maybe it goes past its prime. So I think having the two bottles, you can open one immediately, and then you can determine based upon that first experience whether you want to open the second bottle or hold on to it. So we've definitely seen an evolution in the last since Club 12, and I'm hoping to see continued momentum as we move forward with the club. To me, it's more exciting now than it was before. So.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about El Catador Club is certainly it bears a lot of resemblance to a mug club, but it's something that really originated out of necessity. Prior to 2013, when we would release some of these barrel-aged beers that Wayne and his team were working on, we would have a line halfway down the block. Like the line to buy some of these beers would go into the neighborhood abutting the brewery. So really out of necessity, we said, all right, if the demand is there, we know we can sort of allocate all these beers to really the people that are most passionate about Cigar City beer and some of these really ambitious barrel-aged projects through this club. So the club really was born out of necessity more than anything. Like we're always trying to get more people to come into the tap room, of course, just like everybody else. But whereas a traditional mug club is really kind of trying to encourage people to come back and drink more at the bar, this club is much more, we can only make so much of some of these really ambitious beers. So how do we get these beers to people in the most efficient manner? And it was through this club. And to Wayne's point, we are just now doing renewals for the club. We're up to Club 13. Since 2013, we've now had 13 rotations of this club, and we've had, to me, some of the best beer that Cigar City's ever done has come through El Catador Club. Everything is barrel aged, to Wayne's point earlier, and you're going to get, what I love too is that it's a mixture. You're going to get some of the hits. You're probably going to get barrel-aged Hunapus. A lot of the clubs have had some sort of barrel-aged version of Hunapus. That's one of our most coveted beers. But we also have some really ambitious kind of wackadoodle stuff, whether it's, we had a barrel-aged or a gin barrel-aged triple blended with a sour ale in one club. Barley wines, old ales, Baltic porters, stuff that you don't necessarily see all the time coming out of barrels. So you're going to get some tried and true imperial stouts in barrels, but you're also going to get some really ambitious, interesting stuff, which is really cool. And Wendy, to just kind of answer the other part of your question, how do you sign up? So all that information's on our website, cigarcitybrewing.com. We have a specific website for El Catador Club. It's elcatadorclub.com. All the information's there. It is a limited club. It sells out every single turn. So we are in the process right now, as of March 2nd, of doing renewals for current club members. We're going to open it up for open slots that we do have in the next week or so. So if you just keep an eye on our social media and on our website, that's how you can get into the club.
You mentioned the supply, or excuse me, the demand is just outreaches the supply exponentially, which in turn creates a secondary market for a lot of your guys' beers. This is more towards, Wayne, how do you feel about when you see some of these prices of your beer just double, triple, quadruple what you're selling it for? What is your take as a brewer making that, and as the first employee of Cigar City? Like, what's your thoughts and opinions on that?
To be honest with you, it's not something I think about very often. Okay. It's people's choice to do that. It's legally out of our hands at that point. I mean, to me, my primary goal is to make the best beer I can make and try to hit my targets when I'm making that beer. What people do with that beer once they obtain that beer is out of my control, and I don't think it's really my place to criticize.
Well, then let's look at some of the positives that you've had as you've made so many collaborations, including your collaboratory out in Asheville, which was open in 2019. How did that come about, and who are some of your favorites that you've done collabs with?
Collaboratory. We I thought had a really great collaboration with Mitch Steele. Unfortunately, it wasn't too long before we ran into some issues and had to shut down. Um, I mean, we've worked with some breweries out of North Carolina. One of my favorite beers that we made as a collaboration was a Baltic Porter infused with Amburana. And if you're not familiar with Amburana wood, it's a really cool wood that cachaça is usually aged in, and it provides like gingerbread spices and really lofty vanilla, and it just works great with dark malt forward beers. That was probably one of my favorite beers that we made as a collaboration during the life of Collaboratory.
Gotcha. What about you, Neil? I mean, you're out and about. You get to really get out and talk to the people. What are you seeing as some of the collaborations that the fans of Cigar City love, or maybe what's one that they're clamoring for?
If there's one that we get the most questions about, it's Bamburana. So it's a collaboration we did with Oscar Blues that does use that same wood that Wayne was just describing. It's one that saw a pretty wide distribution. On our social media, people ask about that all the damn time was Bamburana. When is that going to come back? And thankfully, again, being part of CANArchy, that's something that very well could come back. It's not out of the realm of possibility. For my money, we've done a couple collaborations with a brewery in the Atlanta, Georgia area. It's called Wild Heaven. They do some incredibly ambitious stuff. Their brewmaster and owner, Eric, is a lunatic, and some of the ideas that he comes to the table with are really great. And for sort of sentimental reasons, one of the collabs that we did definitely has a sort of a soft spot for us. It was called To Dan.
Hey.
It was
No, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. It's
not you, Dan.
Oh, it wasn't to me?
No.
Oh, well.
We very well may make a collaboration inspired by you, Dan. It's not too late for that.
Sounds good.
But that was a super cool beer. It was brewed in honor of a friend of ours named Dan who had passed. So that one's got a sentimental spot for us. Other than that, to me, one of the coolest collabs that we ever did was, I hate to keep going back to Amburana, but it was the collaboration that we did with Firestone Walker.
Totally agree.
Los Leñadores.
Yes.
You could probably talk about that collab a little bit, Wayne.
I looked at the spider chart for that, it's a Century spider chart, and I've never seen such a full spider chart in my entire life. It hit everything. But we brewed this beer in collaboration with Firestone, and it was brewed prior to the Firestone Walker Invitational one year and was released the following year. Basically an imperial brown ale that was aged in bourbon barrels for close to a year, then infused with Amburana, and then released, it would have been 2019, I believe, because 2020 got canceled. But yeah, that was definitely a great beer. And I thought when you asked me earlier, you were only talking about collaborations that were related to Collaboratory. So there have actually been a lot of cool things outside of that. I mean, since Neil mentioned Wild Heaven, we just brewed a beer recently that's still on tap in the tasting room that's called Tam O'Shanter, which the name relates to a Scottish hat. It kind of looks like a mushroom cap. And the base beer is a lower ABV Scotch ale at 6.5%. And the beer was brewed with candy cap mushrooms, which have like this concentrated molasses character with light undertones of curry. And the resulting beer, like Scotch ale already has these earthy notes, and that mushroom being implemented in addition to, like that base style really shines. And and it even goes deeper than that, because Eric Johnson is also, before he got into brewing, he was into horticulture, and he's also been on, like, he has one of the longest running shows about like landscaping and plants and different things like that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of the longest running PBS shows.
It was Garden Smart.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. That's still active. There's been a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, so many that I can't really remember all of them. But we've done some amazing stuff. We did a beer in England a few years ago with grilled lemons and smoked malt that was fermented with Kveik yeast, and that was with Yeasty Boys, and we brewed it in Salisbury. And it was, like basically a really odd hybrid of like a smoked wheat beer. And I mean, I just can't remember them all. There have been too many good ones.
Yeah, we've done, since 2009, we've done over 100 collaborations. That's a lot of damn collaborations. And to me, it's the beer is incredible, but it's really the relationships that we build through doing these collaborations. Through these collabs, we now have friends in Russia. We did a collaboration with a brewery in Russia. We did a collaboration with a brewery in Estonia. We've done collaborations with breweries in Mexico and Brazil. Probably 25 different states as well. So it's just a cool way for us not only to brew some really ambitious beer, but it's a way for us to experience new people, new cultures, and to Wayne's point earlier, find out about how they're making beer. Hey, how are you guys tackling this issue in your brewery in Estonia? How are you handling hops? How are you, approaching using this particular malt? It's just an incredible way to find out about the rest of the world, for lack of a better term.
Totally agree. And there have been some crazy stuff too, like at certain places. I brewed at this brewery in England, and they never add flavor hops to the kettle, because the kettle boils so vigorously, they're afraid to open the kettle during boil. So I said that we have to have this 15-minute addition. And the brewer puts on a full suit. He looks like he's wearing like a firefighter suit, like full cover, with these thick gloves on, and goes up and opens the door to dump the 15-minute hop addition in. Just all kinds of crazy stuff. Everybody brews differently, and has different equipment, and the cultures, though, that's a big thing. Yeah, it's been great. I couldn't have asked for a better life as far as my personal life as a brewer is concerned.
Nick, I know you had a question for Wayne over there.
I do. So Dan kind of touched base on it about the interview that you did a little while back. In that same interview, you mentioned that your style of brewing involved culinary, and I'm going to botch this word, Zimmergy. Am I saying that right? Okay.
Zymergy.
Zymergy. Thank you.
Just a study of fermentation is all.
Okay. So English is not my strong point anymore. So, so is that style? Do you still brew with those two things in mind? And if not, what's your sense of brewing, your style of brewing nowadays in 2021?
Obviously, there's still some culinary components to what I do and how I approach beer, but I don't. To be honest, I don't think that it's as big of an influence today as it was, let's say, in 2009. And the only reason is because it's just been done so much. It's just been done to death, I think. And I'm not opposed to it. I don't dislike it, but there are other things that I think about now, instead of being so culinarily focused. I think that there's a lot to be said about very well-made traditional beer. And I think that there is a lot more research to be done with, using different unique barrels. I think there's more research to be done with unique wood infusion, more research to be done with a lot of different things. I mean, it's process. It's just, like I said, I'm not opposed to it. It's just been so overworked that it's not as much of an interest for me as it was earlier on in my career.
So a follow up to that question, you talked about certain things kind of being overworked, done to death, so to speak. Is there one thing that you haven't done yet in your brewing experience at Cigar City or anywhere in your own personal time that you would like to do that you haven't been really had the opportunity to do yet? Is there something that you want to try that might be outside of what you're used to doing?
I mean, I would like to have more time working with mixed culture fermentation. That would be a very nice thing to do. And another thing that I've wanted to do for quite a while is, it's going to sound stupid and silly, but I just want to make flat lambic. Like, I don't want it to be carbonated. I just want to make like 4.5 to 5.5% still lambic, put it in a bottle and drink it, and and see what people think of it. It's not a new idea by any means. I mean, if you look at some of the Cantillon beers, what's it called? What's it called, Neil?
The Grand Cru, and I don't remember how to pronounce it. It's like Bruschetta or something like that.
Bruxella, yeah, Bruxella. That beer is kind of the inspiration for what I'm talking about. But very rarely do I come across beers that fall into that category. And while it might sound odd, it's also an inspiration from like being in Brussels and drinking lambic on cask, which was pretty much still. And I just think there's an elegance to drinking lambic, traditionally produced lambic, in that way, in the same way that I enjoy traditional English cask bitter. Like they're the same things from an enjoyment perspective, but different cultures.
I believe a lot of brewers they have a soft spot for a lot of these we can call them foreign styles, like a lambic or a Flanders, different styles that aren't necessarily made in the United States en masse, because for lack of better words, you guys have to, one, brew what sells, because you have to stay in business. You can't just brew whatever you want, because if you did, there are a lot of breweries that would probably go under if they just bucked the trend and just brewed what they wanted as opposed to what the masses want. So there, you say it's stupid, or no, it's wonderful, because I feel like that's something that you should plan for and do something, because as we've seen here, like in the Belgian Beer Festival here at Ashley's every year, when it was open, like people would line up just for those styles of beer, because we just don't get enough of them. So I think that's what we need to see from you in 2021 near the end of the year, is a still flat lambic to brew. But I kind of want to bring it back just a little bit, have a little bit of fun right now, and ask you just a really, because I noticed on your Twitter, this would have been like a year or two ago, somebody was posting, whoever runs your Twitter, oh, what kind of style will you want to see Cigar City brew? And it's because you've brewed every style, and you would just link it right to an Untapped. When are you guys going to brew an alt beer that's just like forever?
There it is.
Like I love alt beers.
It was only a matter of time.
I think they're a very underrated group. Alaskan Amber is such a solid top seller within the country that I feel like that would be a beer. Do you guys have like an amber or an alt beer or some type of malt forward red down there that sells a lot more that we might not see up here in Michigan?
We have a beer called Tokabaga that, but it's a bigger beer. It's outside of alt, and it's American hops, and it leans pretty heavy on Citra and Cascade. So it would be outside of what you're talking about. But towards the end of last year, we brewed a really great alt beer at Collaboratory. It just didn't spend enough time on tap, and it's not that I can't do it. I can do it really well. It's just a matter of having that opportunity to do it. And I think it would be a great beer that we could throw in the lineup going into, September of this year. And I don't know about distribution though. That would be something that would be different and more challenging to consider, because now you're talking about taking on packaging and moving to all these different markets. But I think it could definitely be done from a draft perspective. I mean, I'm very confident about alt beer. I know exactly what it should taste like, and I've had it in Germany, and I enjoy it tremendously.
Yeah, we've done an alt beer. In 2014, we did a beer that was just called Alt Beer with Cigar City Alt Beer. We've done a couple of them, and I think we've also brewed a couple styles that fit pretty firmly in those style guidelines. But sort of Dwayne's point, it's tough to explain what an alt beer is. It's tough to explain what a lot of some of these really, kind of looping back to your comment earlier, Ken, some of these styles that we're taking inspiration from very traditional classic, whether it's, we're not doing lambic, but we've done beers that are that stick to, let's say, the Kolsch guidelines, or that stick to, any number of these styles. We call them something different, so we have to do a little less explaining on the consumer end. So we have a beer right now that's I think a really good example of an English special bitter. It's called Flag or Fail, but to avoid having our servers have to explain what a special bitter is all the time, we just call it an English pub ale.
That's what I see with Minaret, Minaret.
Exactly. Yeah, that's another one. That's that actually won a medal at GABF for English or for extra special bitter. And unfortunately, it's just a style that requires a little too much explaining. So we just call it pub ale when we do brew that beer now.
It's a really good beer though. It's a gold when you're at GABF. It's one of my favorite beers to drink on nitro that we make. Very good beer.
I definitely love a good nitro, and I think we've talked about it almost ad nauseum on this show, about when you get into, especially those the ESBs, that style just seems to scare everyone when you say it's an ESB, because they just don't understand, because they hear bitter, they think bitter, and therefore they just don't bother, and they're like, I'll go do something else, or I'll go drink something else. And it's more akin towards people like me who don't drink IPAs. I don't like IPA. I've probably tried like 400 different IPAs. I found maybe 5 that I like. So it's not for the fact that I just don't want it, but I know Wendy has a question for you guys, and I keep interrupting her, so I'll let her ask away.
That's right. Neil, my question is actually for you. So I'm not going to lie. I love that your LinkedIn bio lists drinks a lot of highlight among your job duties. So in doing my research, I watched a bunch of different interviews and read a bunch of different articles about how you travel around the country promoting Cigar City and telling everybody what you guys do. And my question is, if I have never heard of Cigar City and I'm in Florida for the first time, what would make me want to come to your brewery? Why should I come?
Sure. Aside from the fact that our beer is delicious, which is also something you could say about 95% of the beers of the breweries in Florida and 95% of the breweries in Michigan, for sure. At this point, the fact that your beer is good is just that's the cost of entry, which is great. That means that our industry has elevated to a point. Frankly, 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. There weren't that many breweries that were doing really phenomenal beer. At this point, with 8,000 breweries in the country, your beer's got to be good. That's just, that's a given. So to answer your question, Wendy, what makes us different? Everything that we do is inspired and draws energy from the state of Florida and from Tampa, Florida. Whether it's the name of the beer, something like Highlight we were talking about earlier, a Maduro Brown Ale, the fact that that's the dark wrapper on a cigar. And again, that ties into cigar history and Ybor City and really what made Tampa what it is. To me, that's what sets us apart, is that a lot of that inspiration for the flavors and the inspiration for the names and the branding and the marketing comes from the state of Florida. I love the fact, sort of to go back to the first question, I love the fact that we do have to do a lot of explaining. because that gives us an opportunity to explain what makes our beer different and what makes the branding different. You know, the fact that it isn't just called Cigar City IPA, the fact that it is high. Well, what's a Jai Alai? Well, it's pronounced Jai Alai, and this is what it is, and this is why it's called Jai Alai, and it's specific to very, not universal to Florida, but it's specific to Florida. I love having those opportunities to really talk about the inspiration. And again, the inspiration does come from the city of Tampa and the state of Florida. It's a cool thing. It's something that not a lot of other breweries, even in the state, are doing.
Well, I will tell you that the very first time I actually traveled alone, I was going on a cruise, and I was really excited to find out that my hotel would drive us to your brewery. Was one of the places included, the tap room. And so I actually got the chance to visit, and it was amazing. I felt so welcomed, and I had some amazing beer. It was really awesome. So I really encourage anybody who is in Tampa to go and visit for sure.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear you had a good time. The brewery location, we're right up against a whole bunch of hotels. We're very close to the airport. We're very close to Raymond James Stadium, where the Bucks, Super Bowl champs, where they play. We're close to Steinbrenner Field, where the Yankees do spring training. The location, and obviously Wayne was there at the outset. He can probably speak a little more eloquently on it, but the location was sort of incidental in the fact that Joey, who is our founder, Joey's dad, he still owns the building. Joey's dad is still our landlord, which is kind of funny. But we ended up in that facility really sort of incidentally, but the location couldn't, if we had planned it, we would have screwed it up. But the location really is perfect. We're so close to the airport, the Tampa International Airport, that we're a lot of times people's first stop when they get out of the airport, or we're their last stop when they are on their way back to the airport to go home. It's awesome. But I'm really glad to hear you had a good time, Wendy.
Kind of reminds me of Harpoon over in Boston, because it's right over by the tunnel to get to Boston's airport. And I can't tell you how many times that's like my life. Oh, I got 3 hours. You know what? I'll go to the airport and I'll stop at Harpoon for an hour and a half before I get to the airport itself. As we wrap up, guys, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and kind of answer some of the questions that you might not necessarily see or hear in your regular interviews. We appreciated the history about Cigar City and kind of, encompassing what Tampa and Florida is within a brewery. For me, I'm a big cigar smoker, so I went into a rabbit hole as I was doing research, because you type in Cigar City and you just see cigar reviews, and I'm like, ooh, I've never heard of this cigar brand. Ooh, I need to look a little bit more. Do you guys smoke cigars? That'll be my final question before we end. Wayne, Neil.
Yeah, I get in on a cigar, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a month. So it's not an every week thing, but it's it's a frequent enough thing. And I guess I'm going to kind of tee it up for Wayne. I don't know, Wayne, if you want to talk about Humidor IPA and Spanish Cedar IPA, which however you want to call it. But Wayne found a way to really incorporate cigar culture and cigar manufacturing into beer. And I know that's something that wasn't easy. It's not easy or intuitive to do. You're not just going to throw tobacco into a beer. And Wayne found a really cool way and a really interesting way to incorporate Tampa's cigar history into a beer. So I don't know if you want to take it from there, Wayne.
It was actually inspired by a local home brewer in Tampa, and he started taking Spanish cedar inserts that were put into to individual cigars, and collected enough of them and put them into like a 5-gallon batch of beer, and was able to extract the wood character from those cigar or Spanish cedar inserts, and gave our founder, Joey Redner, an understanding of what that wood was actually imparting. And when I got to Tampa, it was presented to me, but I had no idea what the wood was imparting because I hadn't had the beer. So my first experience actually with the beer was actually with a Japanese beer, which actually was aged on cedar, stocky casks, which is not Spanish cedar. So basically, it finally comes full circle, and we're able to get our hands on the right wood and age the beer on this wood and understand actually what it does. And what it does to beer is it gives big white grapefruit notes with white pepper and undertones of sandalwood. And we incorporated into several pilots in the early days. But today we only have one larger release, and we call it Spanish Cedar Jai Alai at this point. So that white grapefruit note and white pepper, as you can imagine, meshes really well with the hop bill and some of the residual sweetness from Jai Alai, and creates a very nice overall complex beer. And it's one of the big applications, like I said, where we're still using it today, but we've done a lot of different things with it as well over the years. One of my favorite concepts that we've done with it is a concept that's called whole cigar, and it's a lightly smoked stout that is aged in bourbon barrels and then infused with Spanish cedar after bourbon barrel aging. And it sort of gives you like a little bit of everything. So you get maybe the smokiness of a cigar, you get the bourbon that you would want to drink with that cigar, and then you get the actual components, the humidor being infused into the wood. I don't smoke cigars very often. It's been quite a while, but I will tell you in the early days, Joey and I had a field day with cigars, especially at events, and they went very well with Maduro, which is what we would generally drink when we smoke cigars together.
It's actually one of my favorite parts of No Rules Day up here in Perrin is that they'll have a live cigar roller. So you'll get a chance to have a nice freshly rolled cigar when you go. I know, I don't know about Wendy, but obviously I know Dan and Nick aren't big cigar smokers. Back when we could smoke indoors, I was probably smoking 3 to 4 a week. One for bowling, one for karaoke night, one for pool night. Like, just anytime I had a chance that I knew I was going to be at a place for a couple hours, just, I had a humidor in my car. That's how serious I was about smoking cigars. But as we're doing our final circle to close out, Dan, what's your final question for these two gentlemen?
All right, this is directed towards Wayne again. So we were talking about the collaborations that you've done here. Actually, both of you were talking about them over the years. Made me do a little digging, and I found something that I don't think anyone else has done. If they have, it's not really out there. What made you get together with Bottle Logic and brew with Eggfruit, of all things?
Oh God, man, that was absolute torture. If you do you know what Eggfruit is first?
I do. Yeah, I happen to be in Arizona, and it's something you can get here. I don't know if these guys in Michigan can, but I do.
So I think it's referred to as like the custard fruit.
Yep.
Because when it's really ripe, it almost comes across like egg custard. But it also can produce some sulfur components. And this, I processed all the fruit by hand by myself. And these are not easy fruits to process. And you can't get puree of this. So the only way we could get it was to order it from a produce stand called Robert Is Here, which is in South Florida. It's, if it's not world famous, it should be world famous, a world famous produce stand. I mean, it's amazing what they carry there. So we're able to get enough volume of the fruit to be able to make 15 barrel batch of the beer. And I had to, I would process as much as I could. And, I had to keep it in the freezer until I could process it. And it took like, 4 days to process this stuff, doing it by myself. I think personally that the beer came out well, but, there was a slight sulfur component that was created in the beer by the fruit that I think might have been off-putting for some people. To me, it was more of like sulfur dioxide. It definitely wasn't hydrogen sulfide. They're completely different components. But it also had a formidable toasted malt sort of character that I think it aged into over a certain period of time. Because another thing that I had to do was I had to take like something like 150 or 200 pounds of flaked oats. I took them to a local bakery and I toasted them by myself on baking sheets, and they had to be laid out flat so the toasting was even. And this took like 8 hours. So there was a lot of time invested by me personally before we ever even put heat to water to make this beer. I thought it was a cool beer, but is one of those esoteric beers that you probably either liked it or maybe not so much.
And honestly, that beer was delicious. Yeah, exactly like you said, Wayne. I think if people didn't know there was egg fruit in it, or if egg fruit was called, something different, then I think people would have really lost their minds over that beer. But I think people looked at the label and went egg fruit, so it tastes like eggs. I don't like this.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the fruit actually has a different name. I just can't think of it right now.
It's
I
like,
think we decided
Conistol or Canistol or something like that.
something like that, but we decided to call it egg fruit because people would probably understand it better. But in retrospect, we probably should have just called it by it's the Spanish name for it, and it probably would have been might have been different, but it was, regardless of what it was I think to some degree polarizing, not necessarily because of the liquid, but probably because of people not understanding what it was.
They would have pretended like they knew what it was.
Canistol is right. They also call it the cupcake fruit, according to Wikipedia, which we know if we read it on the internet, it's correct.
Hey, we should have just called it cupcake fruit. We would have been rich. We would have made millions.
It would have.
Yeah, if we could have gotten Bottle Logic on board, because a lot of their names are, set up in a certain way, and a lot of times when we work with them, we try to align the two fields of both breweries. But yeah, I'm not disappointed with it. I just think it confused some people.
Now I want to get my hands on it so I can try it. So my last question for the day has to do, I know Dan's drinking the seltzer over there, and I know it's crazy. I posted one day that I liked a seltzer, and I got like 3 invitations to seltzer groups on Facebook. So I saw that you guys are creating a seltzer program, and I actually looked for it when I went to pick up my beer for tonight. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about it.
I'm going to let Neil take this one because I think he probably knows more than I do about it.
Sure, yeah. So you're absolutely right, Wendy. We have developed a seltzer program right now out in the market, just in select markets. So I don't believe it's hit the shelves at, the Myers or any of the stores up in Michigan quite yet, but they are 4 Florida-inspired seltzers. So we've got key lime, we've got orange, we've got Meyer lemonade, and we have got, I'm spacing on the other
my
one
favorite,
right now.
Pink grapefruit.
That's the one.
Pink
That's
grapefruit.
the one.
That's my favorite one. Yeah.
So
I really want to try the key lime. I'm not gonna lie.
It's tasty, and look, we're all on a podcast about beer, and Wayne and I do beer for a living, and everybody listening is listening because they're into beer. It's a different product by all means, but at the same time, it got to the point at our brewery where our brewers were starting to bring in seltzer to have at the end of their shift, whereas normally they'd get off and have a Pilsner, they'd have the Cigar City Lager. Some of our guys started bringing in seltzer, and we said, okay, there's something here. If this is something our brewers want to drink, then we need to explore this, and we need to sort of see if we can put the Cigar City spin on, and if we can make this a product that meets the same quality and the same standards that our beer does. And I think we've actually kind of hit the nail on the head with that with the first releases. We've got a few additional releases that are currently being piloted, and some pretty innovative stuff and some pretty ambitious stuff. It's everybody and their mother's doing a seltzer right now. Of course, it's growing so quickly, but at the same time, I do think there is a way to carve out something different, something that I think speaks to our beer brand, something that is intuitive to our beer brand, instead of just going, I don't know, it's fermented sugar water with a flavoring in it. Doing something that is inspired again by Florida, and something that is true to the quality of our beer and that matches the quality of Jai Alai. So that's really the origin of it at this point.
Another cool thing about it too is we have released a mix pack called Boat Drinks. So if you're primarily a beer drinker, this is a mix pack that primarily has beer. 3/4 of it's beer, and then there's one seltzer in a mix pack. So it's kind of cool to be able to still get the beer that you want, but maybe delve into some of the seltzer without buying a whole 6-pack or mixed pack of seltzer.
Nick.
All right, I guess I'll close it out with my favorite question of all. Not so much about Cigar City, more about you guys. So we'll start with Neil on this one. Your guilty pleasure beer that is not Cigar City, it's in your fridge. What is it?
You know, I'll give you just a funny little story about kind of my background to set this up. In a past life, I worked at a tattoo shop. This was, like 15 years ago. And the guy that had been tattooing there the longest, like serious dude, like face tattoos. 15 years ago, he had face tattoos. Like he was a dude from New York. Like you didn't mess around. His favorite band in the whole world was Death Cab for Cutie. It was hilarious. Like
that's Dan's favorite band, by the way.
Not even close.
So I bring it up to say this guy helped me kind of learn about or be comfortable going, you know what, there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. If you like Death Cab for Cutie, if that's your favorite band, go for it. If you like listening to, like Joni Mitchell, I know you might want everybody to think you only listen to like Slayer and Meshuggah, but if you like Joni Mitchell, just friggin' own it. Just own it. And by that extension, I don't really have a guilty pleasure beer in my fridge right now. I could pick up the computer and show you. I've got Coors Banquet. I've got Miller High Life.
There you go.
And any number of those things. There really aren't. I don't necessarily have guilty pleasures. I would say if there's one thing that I'm sort of like, yeah, I'll drink that, and it's a little makes me a little ashamed, it's maybe lime flavored beer, like Bud Light Lime. I don't care what anybody says. That's delicious. But no, there's no shame in my game on that.
Hey, fair enough. Wayne, what about you? What same question, but now it's your refrigerator. What do you got?
I'll take Neil's same approach from a philosophical perspective. There's probably no guilty pleasure as far as I'm concerned. But if it's not our brands, first of all, we don't keep beer in the refrigerator at my house. It goes into to a cooler outside, or it sits on a covered deck outside, because at least during certain parts of the year, you guys know how this is if any of you live in Michigan or in a place where it stays cold, because the whole outdoors is your refrigerator. Like as long as it doesn't get too cold or it doesn't get too warm, you've got a massive refrigerator. So we sort of take advantage of this and try to keep more space in the fridge for food and other things like that by storing beer in like a cooler that has insulation that's about the same on the same par as a Yeti when it gets too warm or too cold. So right now I have Spot and Lager, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and Allagash White, which I'm drinking right now. What's typical to see in there, very, very common, is Spot and Lager and Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. Those are very common beers to see. And if I had access to a really good, well-made Pilsner, something like Frame Pils, that would be in my cooler instead of Spot and Lager right now. But I can't get it down here in North Carolina.
So I've listened to a good amount of episodes of your guys' show. You guys do a really amazing job.
Well,
I haven't listened to every single one, but just out of curiosity, what's been the most embarrassing answer?
Well, speaking for myself, and Ken and Dan and Wendy and Rob, who's not on the show tonight, know how I feel. I think someone said like the last couple of weeks, Ham's Light or something like that.
Yeah,
Ham's Light.
Now I'm giving you guys
Ken.
the heads up, because we always mention Ham's Light as a joke, and he listens to the show because I showed up to his brewery and I heard my voice over the speakers. It was the weirdest thing in the world to hear walk into a brewery and you hear yourself. No, I think the worst answer is no answer. As you guys say, as much as it's a guilty pleasure, it's still a pleasure. And Nick doesn't have the shirt on today, but we have a local brewery here who's our sponsor, North Center Brewing. Their slogan is, "If you like it, it's a good beer." And that's kind of the mantra that we take here. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the time you spent with us, giving us a lowdown about Cigar City Brewing. Check them out. They're over by the airport, so now you don't even have an excuse. If you're flying in or out of Tampa, you have to go check them out. No matter what you think of your beer, we think it's better on draft. Have a good night.
Thanks, you guys.